others opposed to the bill?
Madam Chair and members, Erin Evans-Feudum on behalf of the Paramount Unified School District, also kind of a tweener position. We very much appreciate the Chair and Madam and Assemblymember Weber's dedication to foster youth. As one of the 6 core districts serving hundreds of foster youth in Paramount Unified, we ask that this bill be amended to address the requests made by my colleague, Mr. Shelton. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Barrett Snyder. We have the Santa Clara County Office of Education. Moving to a neutral position, we've been very supportive of this bill as it's moved through the process. Continue to be supportive of foster youth. The author's been great working with us. This recent amendment has created this issue where it does, unfortunately, technically create this cannibalistic environment where we're taking from some to fund everybody. And we just want to work that piece out, and then we'll be back on board. So we'll hope if the bill moves forward, you'll move in the direction Mr. Shelton said. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. LeAngela Reed on behalf of San Diego County Office of Education. The county office has moved to a neutral position because of many of the concerns already stated. We do want to thank Ms. Weber for her dedication to all the children in California and to the legislature for this extra funding. We just want to make sure it's used in the best way and that no one loses services. So we look forward to working with you as it moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Leticia Garcia on behalf of Riverside County Schools, 23 school districts throughout the county, representing 8 to 10% of the total foster youth population. We don't have a position just yet. We're still looking at the amendments. However, an initial reaction is the timeline, making sure that those funds make it to the local school districts as soon as possible, since we want to continue to see services for these students in this next coming year, which starts in a matter of weeks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm James Wogan from Mount Diablo Unified School District in Contra Costa County. I am the coordinator of the Foster Youth Services Program, one of the core programs. First, I want to acknowledge Dr. Weber and Jacqueline Wong with National Center for Youth Law for their great work on behalf of foster youth. We have a few concerns about the legislation. The first is I'm echoing that the core programs, which are model programs for foster youth, would be effectively eliminated under this bill. We don't believe this is the time to eliminate model programs, especially under LCAP as it moves in and foster youth are priority population. This is not the time to eliminate model demonstration programs with proven effective best practices. So that's our first concern, is the effective elimination of the core district programs. We need them more than ever at this time, and some of our foster youth and former foster youth are here to attest to the benefit they've received from our programs on short notice. The second concern is regarding language that calls for the effective elimination of tutoring that's provided at county offices of education. The language in the bill as currently amended states that offices of education would require certification from local school districts that they're unable to provide certain types of services and support. For example, tutoring services. So that you can't imagine any school district certifying that they're unable to provide tutoring or support services for foster youth or any other student. The result would be that the tutoring services that are provided throughout the state of California would no longer be available, and that would take effect potentially immediately. The loss of that academic support is a big concern because it's one of the key services that offices of education foster youth services provide. So we're very concerned. I wouldn't say that we're opposed to this bill, but we do have a number of concerns in the way it's written. So the first, we respectfully ask that you take out the language that calls for the elimination of the core district foster youth services programs. Thank you so much.
Hello, beautiful and wealthy people. My name is Nakia Kaisa. I agree to everything James Wogan said. I have been a current foster youth for the past 7 hard years. And due to being in the system and adjusting to new situations and environments, it was harder for me to keep my attention focused on my education. So I was close to due to expulsion, but luckily for James Wogan and his supporting team, I was actually given another chance to continue my education and succeed as a current foster youth. So I demand that you guys continue these services because it helps foster youth in the long run. Little do you guys know, you guys just think that it's just easygoing, but actually adjusting to new living environments and spaces, it's really hard, and education is the last thing that a foster youth is worried about. So meeting James Wogan and his whole entire team actually saved my life. So I actually want to thank them from the bottom of my heart, because if it wasn't for them saving me and my education, I don't think I would be here. So yeah. Keep it going because they do very good work. It's really supportive in the long run. Sorry, I'm actually hecka nervous, but yeah, got my message, right? Thank you.
Hello, I'm Derek Wang, also from Mount Diablo Unified School District, along here with Nakia, James Wogan from earlier, and many others who will speak after me today. I'm a school social worker and part of the team of the core FOS program, Mount Diablo. One of my main roles is actually coordinating school-based counseling support. We actually use our funding to also support interns and to provide the weekly support that Nakia was talking about. Foster youth go through a lot of ups and downs on a weekly and monthly basis, and we're there providing the human and relationship connections that keep them through school. And as you can tell from Nakia, we keep up with them after they graduate from high school. Our program actually moved closer with employment programs and LSP programs in our county, and we believe that this model works. So the elimination of the program actually will be a huge setback, not just for the core programs, but in terms of what other programs can turn to as to what programs work for foster youth and education as model programs. So again, I'd like to consider the amendment in stopping the elimination of core foster youth programs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Osman Kudus. I'm actually an intern. I'm an MSW student. I've spent this whole past year interning with Schooling Services, Mount Diablo Unified, under James Wogan and Derek Wang. And so I've spent this past year experiencing firsthand the amount of work that's been taking place. And anyone who's worked with foster youth knows that they come from a background of very unstable, rocky background. And what they need, that's reiterated over and over again, is stabilization and just a stable environment. And if you allow, I can say from my own personal experience that the services being provided there has been kind of like the port in the storm. It's been a really stable, effective program. And my concern is just that any amount of change will again create that destabilization that they so much dread right now. And so foster youth, they're yearning for having some kind of stability, which they have right now for some time. And so the concern is any amount of change right now will throw them back into that. It's kind of like throwing a curveball at them. And so that's the concern I have. No need to reiterate. I think Mr. Sheldon, Mr. Wogan have spoken already. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Miriam Adelat, and I'm a social work specialist with Mount Diablo Unified School District, working with James Wogan as well. And I'm the Youth Employment Services Coordinator, primarily working with foster youth and supporting them with employment services. And our program provides direct service for youth, and the relationships that we build with the youth are beyond what social workers do on the county level. And so the employment is a new piece for the school district, and it's because of the services through schooling services that we have, through foster youth services. And to eliminate a program like this would also be something detrimental to our foster youth. It would bring a new shift, it would bring all these changes, and they'd have to go through a whole new process all over again. So I'm not necessarily in opposition, but very concerned.
My name is Justice Woods. I'm a foster youth in Mount Diablo Unified School District in Contra Costa County. And I just wanted to say that foster youth services have really helped me in school. I've been to 4 different high schools, and I'm only my junior year in high school. And so foster youth services, when I came to Mount Diablo Unified School District, they helped me acclimate to my situation and helped me move forward in my schooling and my education and make me want to look forward to higher education. So I feel like this bill or the amendment is kind of like, I feel like my main concern is that's going to get rid of this service for other youth coming, in the next couple of years. It's going to get rid of the service altogether, and other youth won't have the benefit of using foster youth services to their advantage like I did. And so I just want to come to you guys today and let you guys know the foster youth service is a wonderful program, and it should stay, and it should still be implemented, and it's a direct line for us in our education. So. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Weber, would you like to respond to those
Of course.
questions?
I think the Department of Finance is here. We'd like to have them address the issue. This is not about elimination of services. You don't add $25 million to a program and eliminate services. That's not what happens. And that's what's happening in the budget. We're adding $25 million to this program to provide better coordination and services that are there. We're constantly working to make sure that the agencies that believe they're going to lose services will continue those services that are there. Change is always difficult. We know that even when it's sometimes to improve services. This intent is not to attack on foster youth services. This proposal came out of foster youth services itself in terms of looking at what it was not able to do and the coordination it needed to be able to serve all of the children of California. It is because of our interest in foster youth services, not only last year did we engaged in expanding the resources of foster youth services in terms of those who are relative care to make sure they had the resources there, including foster youth services and LCFF to identify the unique challenges that are there in the resources in the concentration grants to make sure the foster youth services are there. This was to address a continuing gap in the services that are there to provide an additional $25 million to the program that has been authorized and signed by the governor. This legislation will help to implement that, and we're working out the bugs to make sure that there is no loss of services. There are no pieces missing. A no vote on this basically would eliminate services based on what has happened in the budget. So we want to make sure that we do the right thing to make everyone that's there. We could have done trailer bill language, and that would have been quick to the point, and I was encouraged to do that. But because we wanted to get the input, and even against the advice of my staff sometimes, which has cost them many hours of discussion and ongoing challenges, and we're still working to make sure that all those needs are met. I didn't do a trailer bill language, which is still an option. But I chose not to do it because we wanted the input, we wanted the involvement of stakeholders, and we've been meeting with an awful lot of stakeholders, and I know you know how that goes. You can meet with a lot of stakeholders, and still there's one stakeholder that didn't get met with, but yet their issues were raised, and we've had all of these issues brought to us, and we're still working on it, and we are working to make sure that every child in California who is in foster care will get the highest quality of care and the best quality of care without a loss of service to anyone, and that is our commitment. We've heard from some of your offices. We have some of your recommendations. We're looking at all of those, and we will keep you posted and engaged. I'd like the Department of Finance, however, to respond to some of the issues of resources.
Sure. Thomas Todd, Finance. So I think what you've heard is accurate. We've been working very hard behind the scenes, with ledge staff, finance staff, to try to work out ultimately language that we believe is reflective of the compromise that was reached as part of budget negotiations. And sort of central to that was the notion that we would pivot this program from a sort of hodgepodge of direct services and coordinative services to a $25 million program that was focused on coordinative services. And so that is why you see language that, eliminates, to use some of the words of some of the speakers, eliminates a direct distribution to some of these core districts. We don't believe that it's necessary to allocate funds directly to those core districts. We think that the combination of additional LCFF resources, of which foster youth certainly generates some of those additional resources, should be focused in maintaining model programs. And under the auspices of this bill, there'll also be opportunities for districts, these core districts, to work with their relevant counties who would receive the money in lieu, and work out agreements to basically provide services to ensure that there is no drop-off in direct services to these foster youth. In fact, that's what this MOE language is actually specifically targeted to achieve. I mean, it's holding folks accountable for the next couple of years during a transition, because we all acknowledge that this program is transitioning. It holds them accountable for providing the requisite services in some combination, whether that's dipping into their own LCFF and or receiving, some level of grant from the county, who would actually be receiving the money directly, under the new sort of rubric of the program. So we understand and acknowledge the concern. We appreciate the concern. But I think central for the administration in sort of negotiating this agreement was that we would move this program forward in a different direction, in a direction that we believe is actually more complementary of LCFF and reflects the fact that LCFF and under LCFF, foster youth are now one of 3 student demographics that actually generate additional resources for local districts. So,
Thank you. Is it, you heard the request for perhaps an urgency clause. Is that needed, do you think?
Yeah, you know, I think, you know, we get the point. I think we understand that folks, you know, are needing to plan programs. So there, you know, there are a couple of ways to go about that. Certainly, you know, there's a large influx of LCFF resources that most folks are enjoying this year. So, I mean, you know, from a sort of cash flow planning purpose, folks should be obviously utilizing their LCFF resources to provide for the program right now, with the expectation, of course, that resources in this program will be delivered at a later date. So, I mean, we're flexible on the urgency clause. You know, we understand some of the angst associated with it. I think ultimately it's workable either with or without the urgency clause.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions from members? Dr. Pan.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to say that I want to thank Senator Weber for your leadership in addressing this issue, and also as a physician, a pediatrician who takes care of foster youth. I just want to say that there's no greater champion for foster youth in the legislature than Assemblymember Weber. So I want to thank you for your leadership. I do have some concerns about the bill. I think we shared them with your office. And you know, actually, I'm very proud that actually 3 of the core schools are in my district. And I think it speaks to, one, the excellence and the commitment that we have here in my district to foster youth. And I think, as you also heard in the testimony that came from Sac City Unified and the County of Sacramento, it's not just the money that the schools put in, it's the money that they were able to leverage because they knew they had that. So they were able to get other funders and other people in. And so, you know, one major concern I have is that by creating uncertainty, because we're going to essentially eliminate the funding, that actually not just jeopardizes, and it's great to say, well, maybe you can just take it out of LCFF and so forth, and realize that everyone's already on their process of figuring out how they're allocating their you know, doing their LCAPs and so forth, right? So the problem is now they're suddenly creating this uncertainty about funding, which then, of course, jeopardizes a lot of the leveraged money as well. And I appreciate, Senator Weber, you're saying that your commitment is to be sure that no foster child actually loses the services they're currently getting. And I think that it's particularly important that as we're talking about where we're going to go in the future, and I'm sure my school districts may have different opinions or have than are in this bill, but at least I would hope that we would give them the time, not just basically cut these programs off their knees, and all the supports that are tied to them by basically creating this uncertainty, and at least giving, you know, having at least a 1-year, you know, for another budget cycle, so that they don't jeopardize those resources. And because it's not just about the resources they're getting directly, it's also about everything attached to that. And so to me, that's particularly important. I also would say is that yes, we want to try to get more programs for foster youth across the state, and look at that, and you're actually increasing funding for that, and that's great. But we also want to be sure that we don't that we hold up the ones that are particularly excellent. That's why these 6 programs are there. They have shown their excellence, and that they're models for other people, and I think as well. So to have those programs potentially be jeopardized as we're trying to get other programs as other people to try to gear up more programs for foster youth, I think is sending a very mixed message, which I know you're not intending to send. So I hope that certainly at minimum that there's a commitment to being sure that we give those 6 districts which have developed, you know, programs that people should be emulating, that we don't, that the funds to be able to be sure that they're not going to jeopardize their programs and the related funding as we're moving forward, and that we actually seek to help school districts move to be more like them than having everyone regress, than having having some programs regress. So I would appreciate your thoughts about that.
It is not our intent to have programs regress at all. In fact, the core programs will be, even though they won't exist as some look at them now, they will be, the programs will continue to exist. The services will still be provided in those areas. There'll be greater resources to help them coordinate what they're doing with the existing structure that's coming into place to basically coordinate the foster youth services in a way that enhances the 6 areas in which they exist. So that is the intent of that, is not to eliminate necessarily services, but it is to enhance the services and the coordination among the services. We're continuing to work with all of the groups that are here that have raised those issues that you raised about additional funding and how to get additional resources and those kinds of things. In our mind, this probably provides greater support and security for those agencies, much more than they've had in the past, that have been totally dependent upon trying to figure out how to hustle to get money. We're giving them $25 million. We're not saying you got to go out now and fund yourself and find out how you're going to do foster youth services. This says foster youth services is important enough that the state of California funds it at the point of over $25 million. So that they'll get additional resources. Finally, we're institutionalizing this thing called foster youth services that we haven't done before. That may bring some angst to people, but most folks wanted that. In fact, Foster Youth Services basically asked us to carry this bill for the sake of providing this support, the stability, as well as to give the additional resources that are coming out of LCF. The LCFF already exists, the resources are there. This is on top of that. This is $25 million more. So, you know, I understand that, and we're continuing to work with those groups to make sure that there is nothing in the language that eliminates services, that has kids not getting resources, that limits districts from having the ability to get additional grants if they choose to, those kinds of things. But what we're trying to do is provide the stability, much more than to create instability, but to provide the stability. Generally, when state dollars come in, you think you got a pretty good thing going on because you got some stability, where before you had to hustle and find the money, either in another program or in a grant program or some other relationship that's there. But we're saying to Foster Youth Services, you're important enough for the state to fund you at $25 million this coming year, which we've not done in the past.
So I certainly just, again, I hope that as you're working on this.
And we are.
Yeah, and for the core programs.
We're looking carefully at the issues your staff has raised as we move forward. This bill is important in order for the $25 million to exist, if it's going to happen. As I said, I could have done a trailer bill language, and that would have been quick, clean, and to the point. And then everybody would have been screaming afterwards. What we're trying to do is have some level of inclusion of all the issues, because we know it is a complex issue, and because it hasn't had the kind of funding that has been direct in the past, it has lent itself to a patchwork, as pointed out, of services throughout the state. Good patchwork, good services, but nonetheless a patchwork of services. This then would obviously try to streamline it a little bit better, make it more stable, make people know what the resources are, and provide the kind of leadership and coordination and the utilization of the model programs that have been developed in order to take it around, make it statewide. So it is that effort that is a part of that. We will continue to work on that. We know that we have probably another 3 weeks or so to meet with individuals to make sure that we can, when possible, respond to all the issues that are there. This basically bill passed through, and it's interesting, and now that it's funded, you know, it passed through all the committees and the floor of the Assembly with unanimous votes of everybody because of the fact that we want the expansion of the services. The devil is always in the details. We know, and so rather than, like I said, produce trailer bill language that deal with the details and have the devil come get us all, we decided to, I'll be smarter next time, we decided to basically have stakeholder discussion and conversation that I insisted my staff have in order to make sure that we all knew what was in it, and we were doing the very best we could to make sure it was implemented for all the children of California. So, I mean, that's why we ended up continuing with the bill rather than just embedding it in the budget as trailer bill language.
Thank you. Anybody else? Senators have any? Oh, yes, Senator Leyva.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Dr. Weber, I just want to thank you so much for bringing this bill forward. Growing up in today's world is hard. Growing up as a foster youth is even more challenging than most of us even know. Most of us grew up in a different time. I think anything that we can do to help our foster youth, we absolutely have to do. I am very excited and happy to vote on this bill. And I also know that you will make sure the intent of this bill is what happens. I have complete faith in you and what you're doing. And again, I thank you for bringing this forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have a foster child in my family who was in 8 foster homes in 5 years before my adult son and his wife adopted him at 11. So I know what it is to have foster children and the difficulties they often have in staying in homes. So I'm excited that there's resources here for all foster youth. And I understand with the other agencies that it seems to me this is going to help a lot more people than just the 6 programs that we have going now. So with that, do I have a motion? Okay, moved. And will you call the roll, please?
Do pass as amended to appropriations. Liu. Runner.
Aye.
Runner, aye. Block. Block, aye. Hancock. Leyva. Aye. Leyva, aye. Mendoza. Monning. Monning, aye. Pan. Vidak.
Aye.
Vidak, aye. That's 5-0. We'll keep it open.
It has 5-0, and we'll keep it on call for our members to come back from presenting bills.
Right.
Thank you very much, Dr. Weber.
I didn't plan to occupy your morning. I still have one more bill, AB 1000.
That's right.
This should be fast. Thank you. AB 1000, Madam Chair and Senators, I'm pleased to present AB 1000, an act related to student success fees at California State University. AB 1000 is largely consistent with the requirements adopted in recent CSU trustees resolution and will be the next legislative step to ensure students continue providing input and authorization into the implementation of student success fees. AB 1000 mandates that the CSU shall not approve a new student success fee or an increase in an existing student success fee unless the campus undertakes a rigorous consultation progress that informs, educates students regarding the fees and hold a student election. Campuses will be required to hold a student election on the implementation or repeal of any current and are opposed to student success fee with a majority of the student body voting affirmatively. We as legislators need to ensure that students will continue to have a voice in student success fees that directly affect them. Many of you know that, I guess, in 2012, there was an effort to, a concern about the increase in fees. We, in our budget passed in 2013, the fact that our student fees, tuitions and fees would remain constant, there would be no increases, only to discover at the end of that year that many of our campuses had raised fees. I was shocked when I went to an opening of our new student center, very happy that I was going to have something good to say to students about how we were holding down the fees, only to find myself in the midst of a protest against the state legislature about fee increases, them not knowing that the fee increases had existed not because of us, but because individual campuses chose to do so. I can remember I was a faculty at San Diego State for 40 years, and during that time, near the end, there was an effort to increase student fees. And every time it came up to talk about student success fees, the students said no, because they couldn't afford additional fees. So I was surprised that we went to a new process that didn't really require students to vote, required some level of consultation that only a few students participated in, and as a result of that gave the ultimate authority to the president to raise fees on students. Those of us in the legislature were outraged by it. Since then, obviously, the campus has undertaken some efforts to create a policy, but it's not necessarily a binding policy forever. It's something they've agreed to do. This legislation would take that policy and basically make it a part of the state policy as to how you can increase student fees. Here to testify with us today, we have some students from the various campuses as well as advocates, and they will be advocating for AB 1000, which we think strikes an appropriate balance between the campus's ability to propose student fees and the need for all students to have a voice in that process.
Thank you, supporters. And if you could keep it brief, since the last one went a little long. Thank you. It doesn't seem to be much opposition.
It shouldn't be, but there will be, as always.
Good morning. My name is Meredith Turner, and I'm here on behalf of the California State Student Association in support of this bill. And with me to provide the student perspective, we have Edgar Garcia from CSU Stanislaus.
Hi, good morning. As Meredith just stated, my name is Edgar Garcia. I'm a student at CSU Stanislaus, as well as the newly elected Vice President of Legislative Affairs for the California State Student Association. CSSA supports AB 1000 by Dr. Weber. After many months of campus forums and lengthy deliberations, the Board of Trustees approved a series of policies for Category 2 student success fees that we believe reflected the sentiments of students. However, this piece of legislation as statute would reinforce the sentiments of students and would ensure that each campus has a thorough consultative process prior to adopting such a fee. Our students, CSSA and CSU students, played a critical role in the work that the CSU's trustees undertook regarding student success fees, and we are pleased by the changes made to the student success fee policy and urge an aye vote on AB 1000.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Megan Brightwell on behalf of the California Federation of Teachers. CFT continues to support additional oversight and scrutiny of the imposition of student success fees, and we are pleased to support AB 1000. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others in support? Any opposition?
Good to see you again.
Nice to see you. It's a friendly opposition.
Always.
Absolutely, always.
Always.
And with respect. Sorry, I'm a little slow here.
It's okay.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, I'm Karen Yelverton Zamaripa with the California State University. Let me just start with an acknowledgement and thank you both to our students and to Senator Weber for really calling it to our attention, certainly the new Chancellor, Chancellor White's attention to the creation of student success fees that do exist at 12 of our campuses. I will note that 2 of which were imposed by students themselves by a vote. I had the privilege of spending about 5 years having the alumni of the San Luis Obispo campus trail me with business leaders wanting to know why Charlie Reed wouldn't let the campus implement the fee, even though the students had voted for it. And part of that was because he was concerned about the slippery slope of the haves and have-nots. So we have had a long history on this. We first negotiated the policy prior to this one with Senator Jack O'Connell when he was serving in this House. So what I want to make sure that the committee understands is what this bill does is codifies our policy, which on the face of it obviously would make sense for all of you as policymakers who are legitimately concerned about the ongoing affordability of attending CSU. But what I would try to suggest, and will continue to try to convince Dr. Weber, is that what we're interested in doing is finding a balance between governance and our accountability to students and to you. And what we proposed to Dr. Weber and to the committee was a balance that respected that the Board of Trustees, as confirmed by this body, has the authority and the responsibility to oversee the operations of this institution with your guidance. And the policy she's codifying is the one we developed in response to a request by the legislature for us to do so. And we did it in consultation with students, faculty. We did it in various forums up and down the state. We had several meetings with your legislative staff in both houses and the governor's office, which resulted in the policy adopted by the board, which Dr. Weber is now proposing we put in statute, which means any change to this in the future has to come back for statutory revision. What I proposed was a balance to say, I get it. I get that you want to make sure we don't go rogue. We don't ignore our own policy. We don't ignore the direction that you gave us. We don't ignore the work we did with our students. So what I proposed was that we have retained the authority, and you not put this in statute, but what you do put in statute is requirements as it relates to any notification and involvement of this body if and when there's a proposed change to the policy. Now, let me be clear. Any change in this policy would have to be in 2 public meetings of the Board of Trustees anyway. But what I proposed was a 30-day notice to the legislature before it even becomes an information item to say, okay, if you have concerns, we're going to continue to be held accountable, but you're going to retain the role of the Board of Trustees in governing the institution. I was trying to find a balance. Now, unfortunately, Dr. Weber did not feel comfortable with that. I respect that. But as a result, we have to oppose the bill because it takes away the role of the Board of Trustees in a key area in running the institution, and believe it's inappropriate to statutorily tie our hands while you're not doing it to others who continue to have the authority to make decisions that may not be called student success fees but are called other things. And at a time when you have been incredibly generous, I should have started by thank you for this budget, we all know that we're not on a path of full recovery. Nobody is suggesting that those dollars continue to be leveraged from students. But it's also true that if you talk to students at the campuses, they appreciate the services that they are paying for with these fees. And when you talk to them about whether they would want them removed, they would tell you no. Was the process appropriate 7 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago? No, that's why we have a new policy. But what we are asking is there be consideration about whether there's the appropriate balance between the role of this governing board and the authority that they hold in keeping campuses operating and providing full programs and services to students when we are not being fully funded by the legislature, and while we have not raised system-wide fees, and while we have a policy that says that there's a process, including an election by students if there is going to be one, and being accountable to you about whether we hold true to our word and to our policy, which is exactly what's in AB 1000. So that's what we proposed. I understand she was not willing to take that, but as a result, we have to oppose because of the direct assault, frankly, on the governance of the institution and the disparate treatment, frankly, about the authority for us to provide services in consultation with students and faculty and staff. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Dr. Weber.
Yes, I assume that's the end of all testimony. Let me just simply say that I appreciate, we've worked well together with the Chancellor's Office concerning many issues. It should be clear that, that the policy that currently is in place is not because the CSU recognized its error. It was because of the outrage of the legislature and the students concerning the increase in fees. That should be understood. So it's not that they undertook this effort because of that. We were also in the process of legislation that would have frozen the concept of fees, period, or eliminated them, as well as created legislation for that. We gave them an opportunity last year to basically engage in the process of making recommendations in their policy with regards to what legislation or policy would look like. And as a result of that, we respect what the work that they've done and codified it. It is important that we recognize that we have not taken the authority away from the Board of Trustees. In fact, what we have done, the Board of Trustees continues to run the system, can increase fees if it chooses to. What has happened in most of these cases is that the campuses have individually increased fees. The students want the fees, as they say they love the fees and want to keep the fees. They have the authority to do that. Because they can vote to keep fees. I mean, that is a part of this process. This process basically says that as a legislature, we recognize the Board of Trustees has a responsibility to identify the tuition and the fees for students at the CSU. We then recognize the fact that if there are these things called success fees, and when I was at San Diego State, people said, whose success was it? Because they couldn't figure out where the money was going. There was no record as to what it was done. Some of it was used for athletics, some for other things that students may or may not have wanted. Students do assess themselves. San Diego State assessed itself to build a new student center because that's what they wanted. And they assessed themselves those additional fees to make it happen. If we're going to have campuses basically creating different fees, the students ought to be agreeable to it. And that is important, that they should agree to assess themselves additional fees. And so that's why we've said this ought to be in law. You know, so that we don't have to wonder when we decide the whole fees standard or whatever it is, that all of a sudden these other things occur that did not have student input. And so for that reason, we've not taken away the authority of the Board of Trustees to continue to run the campus, to identify its increase in fees and other kinds of things that it has the authority to do. What we're saying is that if you're going to add extra fees on individual campuses, those students ought to have the input and the say, because it's additional resources that they believe that will so-called enhance their success as students, whatever that means. And that we have a responsibility as a legislature, as we've tried to do this time, to fund our campuses appropriately, recognize the challenges that are there, but not to have certain campuses with higher fees and other fees unless the students agree that they know what that fee is for, they know what it's going for, they know what they've committed to fund, and those kinds of things, rather than just having fees appear, $300 and $400, $800 appear, and they're not sure what the money is going for because there hadn't been that accountability in the past to identify a fee for a specific issue that's there. We respectfully ask for your aye vote for AB 1000.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there questions from members, comments? The bill has been moved. Dr. Weber has closed. The recommendations do pass. Call the roll.
Do pass to appropriations. Lou?
Aye.
Lou, aye. Runner? Aye. Runner, aye. Block? Block, aye. Hancock? Hancock, aye. Leyva? Leyva, aye. Mendoza? Aye. Mendoza, aye. Monning? Aye. Monning, aye. Pan? Vidak? Vidak, aye.
Okay, you have 8 votes sufficient for passage. We'll leave the roll open for
It
our
was
absent
wonderful
member.
spending my morning with you all.
Thank you.